Thank you so much for inviting us to participate in this competition. In 2017, 2018, we installed a geothermal heating and cooling system at Louisa Alcott's Orchard House in Concord, Massachusetts. The home was originally constructed in the 1660s, and the land was purchased by the Alcott family in 1857. At that time, the house was considered a teardown and was thrown in for free as part of the real estate transaction. The reason that the Orchard House is important is because it's where the beloved American author Louisa May Alcott wrote her most famous book called Little Women in 1868. She was a self made woman who made money writing books and stories for magazines. That picture there on the right was taken in about 1865, and that's how the house looks today. The Alcotts lived at the Orchard House until 1877, after which it sat empty for several years. In 1911, the property was purchased and turned into a living history museum. It's now on the National Register of Historic Places and is run by a nonprofit. About 80% of the furnishings in the house were owned by the Alcott family over the years and were donated back to the museum when it opened. It's open daily and gets about 50,000 visitors annually. Visitation can double or triple with publicity. The most recent movie adaptations of Little Women include the 1994 movie starring Winona Ryder and Susan Sarandon, and more recently the Christmas 2019 version starring Saoirse Ronan and Meryl Streep. And there, up in the left corner, you can see the Orchard House there. The driving force for the new heating and cooling system was the fact that the old system was breaking down frequently. The operating costs were very high, and its operation was overly complicated. We wanted to provide a system that was easy to use and maintain without requiring any formal training. They were looking to improve comfort. It was too cold in the winter and too cold in the summer. With over 80 women and one man working at the house, no one was ever comfortable. And the building is uninsulated with single pane windows, and insulating the building is not possible. To maintain the historical integrity, no visible outdoor equipment was an absolute must, and we were required to reuse any existing holes in the floors or walls for grills or vents whenever possible. We were also to minimize the damage to the orchard and grounds. Another priority was to protect the museum collection, which includes the structure itself. This comes down to humidity control and temperature stabilization. As an added bonus, the geothermal system also happens to fall into the Alcott's transcendentalist philosophy of do no harm to self and the environment. There's evidence of old heating systems everywhere in this house. We figure there have been about 6 iterations of heating systems over the past 300 years. Originally, the home was heated with traditional fireplaces and wood stoves, and here you can see the vents, exhaust vents for the old fire stove. In 1871, a modern gravity hot air coal furnace paid for by Louisa May Alcott herself with proceeds from her book was installed, and you can still see several of the soapstone surrounded grills like this one here beside the fireplaces located throughout the house. After that, a steam boiler was installed with radiators, which was later converted over to a gas-fueled hot water system. And this is the old Burnham boiler that was removed about 20 years ago. The last heating system consisted of 2 large natural gas boilers. Unfortunately, I don't have any photos before we took it apart. Now, keep in mind, this building is only 3,800 square feet, so you could sort of imagine the size of this heating system. There were air handlers located throughout the building with hydronic hot water coil duct inserts for room by room temperature control. The winter relative humidity levels were controlled by dropping the indoor temperature to a minimum of 50 degrees Fahrenheit because it was about the lowest temperature that anybody could really stand while still working in there. Humidity could not be added due to concerns about condensation in the uninsulated walls. The boilers also had a really large fresh air makeup system that contributed to the winter dryness. In the summer, 4 floor-mounted compressors delivered air conditioning through the same air handlers. The compressors were located indoors so that there was no visible equipment outside. The noise level from these compressors made it impossible to spend any time in the basement. And they could be heard upstairs in the museum space while tours are going on. And there I am there taking them apart so you could get an idea of the scale. The summer humidity levels were controlled by running the air conditioning almost continuously and then compensating for the overcooling by turning the heat on. As a result, there were high gas bills in the summer and in the winter, and astronomically high electric bills in the summer. So you can see here 16,000 kilowatt hours for air conditioning versus 1,300 kilowatt hours when we disconnected the air conditioning for a month. This is a photo of the old control system for the last heating and air conditioning system. This setup never worked properly since day one, and it was overly complicated, so the building manager cannot troubleshoot or adjust the system in any way by himself. This project had some special considerations that are not usually of concern with newer buildings. Number one, we could not make any aesthetic changes to the building at all. And because it's a working museum, we had to be mindful that there are tours going on between 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. So we had to be out of sight and quiet while tours were going on all day. No digging or drilling was allowed before the UMass Boston Archaeological Research Team completed their assessment. And here's a picture of their archaeological dig in the proposed drilling location. They didn't really find anything except evidence of an old road, so we were good to go after a couple of weeks. Although the building's only 3,800 square feet, the heating capacity required was about 18 tons. So we drilled 8 closed-loop boreholes, totaling about 3,000 square feet in depth. We didn't quite manage to get everything buried before the winter set in. The sandy soil at this location made for easy digging even though the ground was frozen, which was sort of atypical for this part of Massachusetts, which is usually full of rocks and sometimes boulders. The depth to bedrock was over 100 feet, which is also atypical. We used a combination of socket fusion and butt fusion, depending on the size of the pipe. And the manifolds themselves were about 150 feet from the building. We brought the equipment down into the basement through the bulkhead, and you can see the remnants of the old stone foundation that's been refurbished on top of the new concrete foundation that was put in about 20 years ago. We also brought a horizontal package unit up the stairs and into the attic next to some $80,000 reproduction wallpaper from France. And as you can see, we just barely made it up the steps. And, in each of these pictures, that's about 1,000 pounds on the stairs right there. So we're very conscious of that. A structural engineer was actually brought in to evaluate whether the weight was going to be an issue on the stairs or in the attic. A platform was constructed to distribute the weight in the attic so as to not damage the plaster below or the structure itself. And here I've superimposed a Norman Rockwell painting of a similar era showing what the attic might have looked like when the Alcotts lived there. We removed the old switching relays and controls from the basement control box and provided color touchscreen thermostats for centralized control of 7 zones. Each zone had a discrete room sensor that was hardly noticeable in the museum space unless you knew where to look. And here's an example of one of the 4 heat pumps that we installed. We kept the pumping and controls very simple for ease of maintenance and repair in the future. The heat pumps were variable speed with real-time monitoring control, and so the building manager was able to monitor and control the system on his phone, and then we can also log into the system remotely to monitor the system. We installed traditional ductwork throughout in the basement and hidden in the attic, and the Orchard House sourced these antique-looking cast iron grills to maintain the historical look and feel of the house. We weren't really sure how the humidity was going to behave after we removed the old combustion-based system, so we opted for a low-tech, low-cost monitor before installing a potentially very expensive dehumidification system. So, and then just keep in mind, we could not add humidity in any way. So in the winter, the humidity levels actually improved quite a bit once the big makeup air system was removed. The variable speed equipment easily maintained the summer humidity between the desired 50 to 55%, even during the very hot, humid days. So no additional dehumidification was required. And last summer, they installed this lovely walking path right over the drilling location. So they're really looking forward to reopening later this summer. And finally, we should probably talk about the utility bills. So this graph is showing 15 months worth of data and shows the before and after the geothermal installation. This graph's a little bit deceiving though, because the Orchard House was on a payment plan with the gas company for more even monthly bills. So you can see that for 1 or 2 months every winter, they're actually paying a little bit more for heating than they previously were. But you'll note though that they're now keeping the heat set at 68 degrees all winter rather than between 50 and 60 degrees. So overall, they're actually seeing an annual energy cost savings of 40 to 50% while being much more comfortable more often. And to close, I'd just like to recognize some of the people and agencies involved in this project. It really was a team effort. The project was funded by Orchard House and a lot of fundraising efforts. And overall, I think everybody is really happy with the system, and people working there are a lot more comfortable, as well as the guests. Thank you.